All right. What's going on, everybody? It is Wednesday, February 18th, 2026. Back to our weekly closing bell show. We've got quite a bit of flow to talk about today. A couple of things in the news as well. And not too much in terms of earnings to really look at. Pull that up. So you can see for earnings today, we got Carvana to take a look at. Carvana, DoorDash, Figma, Equinox Gold might be interesting, and eBay. But a lot of the big names have already reported. The big one for tomorrow, for Thursday before open, will be Walmart. Open Doors, probably an interesting one Thursday after close. We'll take a peek over at a lot of these. Oh. That being said, let's jump into it. Let's see what the flow has to say about them. All right, first off, let's look at Carvana. So we were talking about this yesterday. Carvana has had a pretty hefty drop from the top. Okay, there was a short selling company, one of the institutions out there that does research on the financials of a lot of companies, and they took out a very large short position and put out a hit report of how Carvana is offloading their bad debt onto a sister company. Okay, so they're so apparently it's the CEO's father that owns this loan company that is buying out all of Carvana's bad loans. And apparently there's about $1 billion of unrealized losses for Carvana that just are not showing up under their financials at this point. So that's the bear case, that they are doing some shady accounting practices, and that's what's leading into such high valuations for Carvana. How, if you take a look at Carvana's price over time, here, they have gone from this low down in 22 from like $1 something, like what, 34,000% to the top. And right now from the top, it is down about 25%. Okay, down 25% from the top. We'll see what this earnings has to say. Okay, but on the daily, it's fairly oversold. Weekly, not as much. There is a probability that we will see some sort of bounce here, especially as, if you can see here, it's at a point of resistance, point of support. And so I think there's a decent probability we could see it bounce. Now, if those financials start to be revealed of how they are, how those shady accounting practices are actually what they're doing, I definitely think we see this switch it. All right, let's just to show you guys from the lows down over here. That says 13, but no, it was. Yeah, basically, if you got into Carvana at these lower prices here, you would have made quite a bit of money. All right, I think my 34,000 was a little bit over exaggerated. I don't think it went as low as $1 something, but $3 or so, up to the tops 400 and say like 460, 470. But yeah, we are down about 25% from that top. Okay. This trend line that we see right here, This is where you want to say, okay, well, have we found support? If we have, we could see a decent bounce here if these numbers still happen to be pretty strong. Okay. STAX in particular, a lot of stuff being sold off here. So, I mean, we could go back and check yesterday too. See what it says yesterday. Yesterday, there are a lot of puts taken out. But Carvana's up a little bit for today. Overall, let's see. Some puts sold. What is a short-term expectations? I don't see too much for Friday. This was taken out last week. $5-6 million, aiming for below 345. Oh, this one's already made some good money here. So taken out on the 10th. So in about a week, Carvana dropped about 50-60 bucks from that 400 entry point. We see some unusual buys for April. This one aiming for 500 for Carvana. A little bit of a mixed bag here. I'll say these puts already made some good money with the move down. Trading at what? 363 as of right now. Oh no, you tell me. Go ahead, go in the chat. Let me know you guys are here and tell me what you think about Carvana. I've always said you can always take a peek over at their little vending machine towers if you can see one from the highway that you drive by. See how they're doing. Is it filled with cars? Is it empty? That's always a little hint at. It's kind of like looking at the dealership lot. You know, if they can't keep the cars on the lot versus if they're overflowing with cars, gives you an idea of how their sales might be going. All right, what else is going on today? We got DoorDash. Strong move today. I was saying that we have this area support. Too afraid to short Carvana, but I want to. Yeah, I feel like eventually all that stuff is going to come to light. I mean, let me go back into their financials a little bit. You know, for a used car company, PE ratio at about a 80, 79.95. It's pretty expensive for this stock already at this point. Their last earnings was a surprise where they missed EPS by about 20%. Their net margin actually isn't that great. Okay. Annually, even their quarterly. I mean, think of it, they're buying and selling used cars and they're only making what, 2 to 3% off of the whole thing. So, I don't know. I do feel that it is somewhat overvalued. It very possibly could go through another one of these distribution. But is this the buying climax? Is kind of the question. There was a STAX AI print that we saw, I believe, that has this aiming for 700 by May, but I'm a little doubtful on that. I think it might have made a little bit of percentage, but let me peek at my numbers real quick. Oh, I don't think it was a STAX AI print. Oh yeah, it was. On the 15th of January, we saw them aiming for 700 for May. On the highs, it made about a 12% return so far, but it's down pretty significantly from there. So, I don't know. You tell me, do we see another distribution like what we saw here? If we do, let's do this. That's kind of a possibility. Maybe we see another bounce here after earnings. That's really hard to move. Okay, there we go. Maybe another bounce after this earnings, and then we start to come down from there. I don't think it comes out. Yeah, it's not going to go down to that negative value, but maybe something like this. I think down the line we see it come down. All right, next one was DoorDash. DoorDash hurting a little bit. It's at a level of support. It just bounced pretty hard from there, 7% today. Fairly oversold when it comes down to daily conditions and even weekly conditions. You can see that each time that it was at this level on the weekly, we do tend to see a decent bounce from it. So I would say probability is a little bit more to the upside. PE ratio fairly high. I think this has a lot to do with the what their outlook looks like, what their future looks like when it comes down to the robots and what they're producing. See if we can adjust this. I don't know why this was so far off. Already had its blow off top up here, came right back down to the channel. You could also argue this has a little bit of a head and shoulders pattern to it. Left shoulder, the head, right shoulder. And so you usually measure head down to the shoulder, the neckline. Take that, and that projects it to come down right to about 100 or so. So this would be the next target. If they miss earnings and it doesn't look so good, I definitely think we could come down for a little bit further. It's about a third of the way, maybe halfway there, but it did recently just bounce from there. Let's look at STAX. Going into today's earnings, ooh, pretty bullish overall. We got aiming for the 180 strike today. For Friday, that's pretty ballsy right there. $354,000, $7 per contract. Only a 4 to 5% move, which I think that's fair. And WaveX is showing more bullish sentiment. So this to what else? Figma. Ooh, Figma's hurting after their IPO. I remember when we were all talking about this. Figma trying to take some market share away from it's a $24 stock right now. We are starting to see some volume here. So there's some buying happening. Ready to break out just yet? Oh, what happened last quarter? Yeah, so it's right at this resistance. We see good earnings on this. This definitely breaks up above. I think it's it's pretty beat up at this point. Now this very possibly could be a selling climax right here. Not a huge automatic reaction. Yeah, a lot. They've got a lot betting on this earnings here. So, but yeah, Carvana or sorry, Figma, not Carvana. Carvana we already talked about. Figma, WaveX looks slightly bullish, while not too much is going on the flow here. Got some puts that they bought $15 below $15 by 2027, and they got some puts that were sold for next week. So not too much going on for Figma. Okay, EQX. WaveX is this is 80K. That's nothing. Just some calls sold. There definitely was some buying earlier in the year. This is a Equinox Gold, which is a mining company. And it's run up along with that run up of gold. We keep on injecting more money into our system, so this very possibly could continue to rise alongside with gold. Yeah, it does not exactly look exhausted at this. All right, the big one is probably Walmart for tomorrow. Walmart did have a bit of drop. It's been running up hard all year. See what STAX has to say. Does it continue that run up? We got some puts taken out. One set of calls for over 130, but then a strike of 129 for going down. I feel expectations are fairly high with it, but it is also one of those consumer staple companies where, again, people when the dollar is stretched out, where people have to figure out how to stretch their dollar. Sorry, that's what I meant. Uh, a lot of people result to stores like Walmart. All right, it's generally a little bit cheaper. There's actually something interesting I saw of how Pepsi, I believe, purposely had a contract with Walmart where Walmart would be able to sell Pepsi for cheaper than all of their competitors. And it's one of those situations where at the end of the day, they benefit because of these types of transactions. Where if you have noticed that Pepsi is cheaper at Walmart, it's because they are allowed. They're given a the benefit from Pepsi overall. Um, it's interesting how those things work, but it boosts their sales because again, you go in to buy some Pepsi products, you end up walking out with a bunch of other stuff. So Walmart, though, I will say, even with a strong earnings, as much as it can continue to go up, I feel like we probably see a little bit of a sell-off, even with good earnings. Probably a sell-off to continue higher. Maybe come back down to like 120. I would wait on this, let earnings play out, and if you get an opportunity to get in at 120 or even down toward 115, I think those would be good entry points for it. All right, let's chat a little bit. I know we're about to see Baba earnings today. Baba does not report today, does it? Double check real quick. All right, I want to talk a little bit about some news. Just put STAX on. We'll talk. For some of the news, right now we're very much. There's a very high possibility that we will see the U.S. enter a war with Iran, the U.S. and Israel. I would say. Quite a bit of intel coming in, especially of number one, we've got the theory that when the pizza chains around DC are extremely busy, it usually means that they've been working hard overnight and at all hours to try to get ready for some sort of bigger news. Another thing is that there's a lot of our military planes and ships that are headed over in that direction. President Trump has made some announcements as well about how if they don't make some sort of deal soon, that there will have to be some moves happening. There was a post on 4chan of how within 36 hours, so within and possibly within 3 days, so by the 20th we might see action happen. And then so I mean, what do we do in this situation? I would say that very possibly might inject a little bit of fear in the markets. We might see a little bit of a drop, but in a lot of cases with war, the US, because we have a lot of big companies that are defense contractors, you'll start to see money pour into those. I would say this actually leads into a possibility that we're going to see a VIX spike. So my expectation is that we probably see the VIX over 24 soon. That would be my prediction. So you could get into some VIX calls for, I would say, by March, if anything. If they say the next few days, yeah, you could go with shorter dated contracts, but that obviously leaves you with a bit more risk. But what I would say is very possibly we'll see the VIX spike in the next, I want to say the next week probably. Okay, so by the end of February, we're probably going to be, there's a high probability we'll be at war. In other news, Snapchat rolled out a subscription model. They say they have 25 million people that are now on subscription, and that they now have over $1 billion of direct revenue. That's bullish for Snapchat. Snapchat did bounce and pop a few, 3% or so. It's still under $5. I think it's still a solid buy at those prices. Nvidia announced, or Jensen Huang announced, that Nvidia is preparing a new chip that they will be revealing soon. Nvidia earnings is coming up very soon as well. I think they get one more push to the upside, but overall, there's this. My theory is that there's a lot of limitations when it comes down to our expansion of our AI infrastructure, and I've said this in every single live that we've done, but I'll reiterate it, is the fact that anytime we have new technology, whether it was airplanes or television or the internet, a lot of money flows in very quickly, but then investors start to get a little bit impatient with things because they start to realize that we're still at the beginning of those cycles. We're still at the very beginning where while this new technology is going to eventually change the world, think about the internet. The fact is that the infrastructure and all the pieces are not quite there. So, yes, when the internet was first uh starting to be mainstream, when cell phones were starting to become mainstream, money flowed into these companies. However, it took a very long time for that stuff to roll out, and the infrastructure did not just appear overnight. I saw this. There's this tweet, and it says the reason why RAM has become 4 times more expensive is that a huge amount of RAM has not yet been produced, was purchased with non-existent money to be installed in GPUs that have not yet been produced, in order to place them in data centers that have not yet been built, powered by infrastructure that may never appear, to satisfy demand that does not actually exist, and to obtain profit that is mathematically impossible. And so the thing with AI right now is that AI has kind of a PR nightmare. Not everybody is on board with AI, right? We are also starting to see AI being injected into robots and being used with things where it could be militarized and things like that. And a lot of people, and the fear of that AI is going to replace a lot of people's jobs and all that. So while a lot of these companies, to start off, like Nvidia, had a huge rise because they were the main chip that everybody needed, the main GPU that was being used for AI. And then all these other companies started to produce and started to find ways to pull away from that market share. Then we saw money flow into the the quantum computing space because there was promise within that. And we saw money flow into the data centers and the infrastructure to build the data centers. And then we saw money flow into the energy companies that are supposed to be powering all of this infrastructure. But the the amount of energy that we need to power these companies, to power this AI revolution, a lot of it hasn't been built yet. All right, and so companies are starting to, or investors are starting to get a little bit impatient with it. And one of the examples we can see is this with Microsoft. Microsoft had a 20% stake in OpenAI, and because OpenAI still hasn't figured out how they're going to actually make money, there's a prediction that OpenAI is going to lose. Last year they had a revenue of $14 billion. This year they're projected to lose $14 billion, and up to 100 billion in the next, I want to say 5 to 10 years, right? So, you know, Microsoft had a very large stake in it. People are starting to realize that, what? OpenAI has very, very vast and broad dreams for the future, but none of it makes sense yet. They started to roll out ads because they were trying to find ways to make more money, and Microsoft got caught within it. Okay. And all the big tech companies started to see a bit of a sell off because of the hesitancy with AI and the AI trade. And the interesting thing is that Apple was the one that was like, you know what, we're not gonna invest that much into it just yet. Okay, while most of these other big tech companies are down anywhere from 20 to 30%. Like look at Meta here. Meta tipped on almost 800 and came down 20%, almost 26, 27%. And a lot of that just had to do with the fact that the trade, the hype of the trade is starting to die down. And Apple was actually right in it. Apple was like, you know what? If we're gonna implement AI, we're going to use what Google has. We'll do a contract with them, just like they allowed Google Chrome to be one of the main browsers available. A lot of little things where at the end of the day, Apple became kind of the safe haven for tech, where people are realizing, hey, you know what? The AI trade's not ready yet. We're not really seeing how the money is going to be made with it, because as of right now we have a lot what is AI mostly being used for. Yeah, there's going to be some people, some of the management probably uses it to help their emails, probably helps produce some sort of framework for projects that they're about to do. But if you're working in a factory, aside from the machines that are being built, we still need people to actually manufacture stuff. We still need people to actually man the lines and stuff like that. AI isn't necessarily going to take over the oil rigs and a lot of the manufacturing. Eventually, it might. Eventually, as we develop more machines and things like that, it could. But there are still, we still need it. And another fear is the fact that it's going to take over too much. And the public isn't necessarily ready for it. So it's got a lot of this negativity surrounding it too. So, the AI trade, it's there, but it's got to figure out a way to make money, and that's where the hesitancy is coming from. Let's peek over at some of these names that should be reporting. Pull them up. I think just main two here: Carvana and DoorDash. Let's go down to the 15-second. Look at it tick by tick. I've got another minute till we see Carvana report, so let's see how that goes. Our Carvana's down what? 3, 4%, 5%, 6%. SMH big money puts. I gotta find out which ones those were. I have not monitored them. I'll peek at it real quick. $41,000. H. March 20th. 400. I don't think they are. Open interest isn't that high on it. Let me double check. Is this right? March 20th puts 400. Yeah, I think they might be out. Carvana now down 15%. 14%. DoorDash all over the place. Jeez. Carvana down $60. Now under $300. Oh, look at that. Carvana is down 20%. DoorDash now down 8%. Well, what's interesting about Carvana is they actually had a good report. Saw adjusted record Strong retail wholesale unit growth, adjusted EBITDA at 511 million, net income boosted, improved margins. But it's down 20%. I mean, I will say the Carvana puts were very pricey. I was looking at it here too. Let's say you bought the Carvana Friday, like the 325 put was already a G each. And yeah, it's gonna open up at like 4,000 each, but if you were willing to take the risk, you would have gotten paid. But we also have to keep in mind too, there's a I think there's a very solid possibility by the morning we might see this come back for 300. I don't know if it's gonna, if it breaks down below 300 and holds, I'd be pretty surprised at that, because I mean that's already a solid candle to the downside. Right, so it's down toward 300 already. Probably 280, 286, 287 is gonna be the bounce there. Yeah, I mean, it kind of played out to the market cycle I drew on here. DoorDash down 8.5%. No. All right. That's really what I had. What happened with eBay? eBay up 4% after hours. Revenue up. Nice. All right, you guys. As always, go ahead and hit that like button for me. We will get back to it next week. Next Wednesday, we'll be back on YouTube. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the Discord channels. If you guys are interested in joining STAX, you've got a code below to use. You know, we're always chatting in there. So if you want a group, you want a community to join and people to chat with and to bounce ideas off of and to follow our STAX flow, I highly urge you to check us out. All right. I will see you guys in the next one. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. We'll talk again soon. Have a great day, guys.